It's the Black Real Estate Dialogue. Tune in. Tune in. Tune in. Tune in.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Black Real Estate Dialogue podcast. Before we get into this episode, if you haven't already, please subscribe, leave us a 5-star rating and review. We are shouting out all the 5-star reviews that we receive. So if you want to get shouted out, leave us a review. Also, if you want to join the Bread Real Estate Investing community, you can do so for just $1 for your first week. Go to blackrealestatedialogue.com or click the link below in the show notes. Very excited about this episode today. Definitely been a long time coming. Here with me today, I have Jimmy Woodard out of the Bay Area in California. Jimmy, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Of course. My pleasure to be here. Thank you for hosting me.
Definitely. So, Jimmy, to start us off, tell us about who you are, where you're from, and just give the audience an opportunity to get to know you a bit.
Of course. Well, I hail from California, so I've been moving back and forth between SoCal and the Bay Area my whole life. So I currently live in the Bay Area. And my journey starts from law school, where I joke all the time that I'm a recovering law student, because for the longest time, I thought growing up that being a lawyer was who I wanted to be. When I got to law school, I was a little bit disillusioned by the whole process. And I figured out really quickly that that's not what I wanted to be long term. So as I was looking for other career paths coming out of law school, I stumbled into the tech world, and I used my previous experience in sales to combine two roles, where I was working for a virtual reality company back when that was actually a thing back in 2016. And then from there, parlayed that into a role at Salesforce. So got deeper into tech world, started into a startup as well. And then came across my buddy from college who had this idea for a great real estate platform called Cloud Castles. And I've been doing that since December of last year, where we launched. So it's been a great journey, and I'm excited to tell the audience about Cloud Castles.
Amazing. So yes, tell us about Cloud Castle. You mentioned you ran into an old friend and kind of got things started. So talk to us more about that and just the early stages of the idea.
Yeah, the early stages, I give all credit to my co-founder, Brian Marks. And one of the things is that, we had stayed in contact post-college. We had been in a lot of different group trips together. So we were good friends from college, but never before had thought about doing business together. However, he knew that I had the itch, which, as you yourself, an entrepreneur, that itch is something that you can't really get rid of unless you scratch it. Mm-hmm. And so he came along one day. We were just having drinks over happy hour. Told me about this idea where he was trying to start a real estate platform to help people build their wealth who may not have the time or money to do so otherwise. And I loved it because, one of the things is I've always wanted to get into real estate since I was in college, where I met him. But there's this thing about real estate where you got to have tens of thousands of dollars to put your foot in the door. And especially if you're looking to invest and build wealth through real estate, a lot of people are left out because they don't have the means to do so. So even though I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, knew a lot about the space, I was always waiting for that moment to jump in with both feet. And then Cloud Castle presented itself, and it's something that, of course, I relate to, and I knew a lot of people did. So that's where the drive came to really build this out into a big company.
Definitely. And so for those who may not have heard about Cloud Castle, what it is, how they can use it, can you give an overview of that?
Yeah, Cloud Castles is a platform to help you build your wealth through snackable shares of short-term rentals. A lot of times people, as I mentioned earlier, may not have the money to buy real estate on their own. Or for those that do, you maybe have a tech job or you're a doctor, lawyer, whatever have you, you probably don't have the time because you're working 60 to 80 hours per week. So what we do at Cloud Castles is we do all the hard work up front in terms of acquiring short-term rentals, renovating them. And then we do all the work on the back end in terms of listing and managing them so that you can come into our platform on a passive basis and invest in small shares. So we break down the total acquisition costs and we divide that by 10,000 to get to a share price that makes sense for our audience. So you get to come in, decide how much you want to invest, and you go from there. You own an asset, and you also get the advantage of being able to stay at a discounted rate. So we're live in Tahoe and we're live in Miami, and both have been doing pretty well. So, our goal is to get a property in pretty much every city that allows Airbnb across the world. And we got our first two and hopefully can continue to scale from here.
Love it. Love it. I think that's an amazing idea. I do have some follow-up questions. So when it came to the idea, and once the company was started and it's like, okay, we want to get our first property to do this on, how did you land on that first location for the first short-term rental?
It's actually a funny story because when we started looking at properties, our first thought was Disney World, Orlando. Because you think about it, that's one of the top tourist destinations in the entire country. We were very, very close to getting an offer accepted, but then this thing that we all know called the pandemic happened. And it was literally the same week that we put in an offer, the world turned upside down. And we had to scramble and go back. Now, remember, this is March of last year, 2020. So the entire business model came to a screeching halt. So at that point, we were thinking, what do we do? Because no one's going out, no one's traveling. How would we even make money from this business? But what we realized is that over time, people started to get anxious about going out. And so we found out that what we call drivable distance vacations really took off towards the latter half of 2020. And us being from the Bay Area, Lake Tahoe is one of the top destinations for a lot of people in the Bay Area. And we saw the numbers were playing out. So that's where we decided we're going to plant our flag in terms of our first cloud castle on the platform. There's a crazy backstory even to getting that, but that's the basic idea of why we chose Lake Tahoe for our first property.
Got it. And at what point last year were you able to get the first property?
But we got it in August of 2020. Now, going into that crazy story, as you can also probably remember, bidding wars, which are still happening even in 2021, were in full effect. Even if we wanted a property, even if we had the funds because we bootstrapped our first property, we got outbid on 4 straight properties before we found the one that we found.
Wow.
And the only reason we even got that one is because of another startup in the real estate space called Fly Homes. I would recommend anyone listening to this, go check them out, either for your own personal property that you're thinking of buying, or if you're looking to get into real estate and you might have the funds and want to do it on your own. These guys are amazing because what they do is they turn your conventional offer into an all cash offer. They weren't even in Tahoe at the time that we were looking, but I cold emailed the founder of this company and he agreed to help us out because he saw we were trying to build our own business as well. And so we weren't even highest bid. Wow. That was the crazy part. I think we ended up bidding 30K over the asking price. Someone ended up bidding 45K over, but because our offer was all cash, it got accepted, and that led to our first launch of Cloud Castles. So, these are the tricks that we learned along the way in terms of being scrappy to get our company off the ground.
Definitely. And so one thing I wanted to ask about, so with properties, right? Typically, it's more or less straightforward. You have a single family home, multifamily, whatever. You have your mortgage, you have your rental income, expenses. It's pretty straightforward. I imagine with the short-term space, specifically with shares and all those things, it can get a little more complex. So can you talk about, I guess, in the planning phase and just figuring out how to financially model this whole thing? Like, what was that process like to figure out, okay, if we get this property, these are the amount of shares that are available. This is kind of the analysis. Here's how we figure out if we can be profitable. What did that look like for you all in the beginning?
Yeah, for us, we actually started from the timeshare model, which is a dirty word, one that we don't even talk too much more about at this stage in our company. But we thought that most people would want to stay in the property, and that was going to be the big thing. But the more that we talked to our early users, who were a lot of family and friends, they all told us we actually care more about the investing side. And so that's when a light bulb went off that, hey, maybe if we focus on cash flow, then that's going to attract people to this platform. So when we looked at the numbers for Tahoe, based on what we put in, that's how we came up with the share price for the specific property. And so it really was a combination of course, the asking price, closing costs, and any renovations that we put into the property. And that helped us determine, all right, this is what we're going to charge on a price, on a share basis. So that if you come onto the platform, it may look small. So, you're talking a couple bucks for a share, but in that sense, that helps you see that, wait a second, I can own this asset, but I don't have to spend tens of thousands of dollars to do so. And then from our perspective on the business side, that creates a flywheel, because if we sell out our shares, now we can take those funds and then put it into the next property, which is how we acquired Miami. And at the end of the day, the last piece of our business model that's important to us is we're aligned with our investors. Mm-hmm. So rather than being a property management company that takes 20 or 30% of your gross revenue, we retain 20% of the asset. So we don't make any money unless the property profits. And we know that that's going to help us better serve our customers who are on the app.
Got it. So the users, those with the shares, they get 80% of the cash flow and you all keep 20?
That's correct. So if we had all of our shares bought out, then 80% of those shares would be towards our retail investors, and then we would retain the last 20%.
Got it. It's a very interesting business model. And what I like about it, from what I'm hearing, is, it seems like y'all are playing the long game. Mm-hmm. The reason I say that is because it's an 80-20 split, right? So, the investors, those who buy the shares, they keep 80, you keep 20. Can you talk more about that and why that is the approach that you're taking at this point in time?
Yeah, we know in startup land there's a lot of boom and bust around not making any money, which means you don't determine your own future. Part of when we were designing this app and this platform was trying to figure out, how do we stay lean and how do we control our own destiny? And that goes into us actually being profitable, which is not something that you see too often with early stage startups. So from the beginning, we wanted to create a model where we're not just making money off of transaction fees, which is great for some companies. Stripe is $1 billion business, but we also want to be able to retain ownership. So if we ever sell the property, then we take part of the proceeds. And then also, again, going back to aligned incentives, we want to be aligned with our investors. So we want you to feel confident that we are looking to make money from this, so that if we make money, you make money as well.
Definitely. Love it. So the first property was in Tahoe. I actually went to Tahoe this past summer, first time.
Nice.
Amazing. Had a great time. Hopefully next time I can stay at your spot.
That's right. Come on through, man. We'd love to have you.
Definitely. So I would love to hear about Miami, because Tahoe to Miami couldn't be more opposite. So tell us more about Miami and just, what was it about Miami that made you feel, all right, this is a great place for the second property?
Well, at the end of the day, we always have our own internal hurdle rate of trying to get to 20% cash on cash return for our investors. That's the lens that we look through any investment. We may not always reach that hurdle rate, but that's kind of our goal, is that bare minimum, if you get on this platform and you're looking for a return, we're going to do our best so that that your money is working for you with Cloud Castles. But then there's this other tug and pull that even to this day, we're looking at a couple other markets to get our next property right now. It's the balance between sexy versus cash flow. So it's very great when you can get both. And that's where Miami came in. But sometimes you choose cash flow versus it being a sexy property where everybody wants to be a part of. So for Miami, it worked out because we had our eyes on it ever since we heard about the boom that was going on in terms of land grab in Miami, and appreciating assets is something else that we definitely look at as well. So we saw that Miami was a very hot spot, and it took us a while. We spent probably 4 months looking through properties. My partner was boots on the ground in Miami before we found one that checked all the boxes. But it has been doing really well for the initial couple months here since we launched in August. And we hope that we can continue to find more properties that, number one, we know there's good cash flow, but also number two is something where you as a retail investor are going to say, oh, I want to own a property in the city.
Definitely. So when you're looking at a market, I'm sure you two and the team are looking at markets all the time, different places. What are some things you're looking for? Because it's short-term rentals, right? So it's
Mhm.
not buy and hold where you could.
Right. Well, it is
I'm
buy and
sure.
hold. It is buy
Well,
and hold.
well,
It's just long-term versus short-term rental, right?
exactly. Thanks for that distinction. The strategy is different, right?
Right.
It's buy and hold, but for short-term rentals. You're not kind of signing people into a lease for a year or 2 years or so. So I
Mhm.
would imagine it's a bit different as far as the analysis. So can you talk about just when you see a prospective city, what is that thought process like? What is that planning like?
Yeah, there are three main buckets that we look at before we decide we're ready to make an investment. So it comes down to numbers, regulations, and renovations. And that last one is the most important, so I'll probably spend the most time on that. But the numbers are pretty straightforward. I mean, anyone in real estate knows how to put together a pro forma and make sure that all the numbers match up to what you're trying to do. So that's straightforward enough. Regulations is also straightforward, but it sometimes is the trickiest because you have to make sure that your property is in a city that not only allows it, but allows non-owner occupied. Because a lot of big cities, they don't want you to have a property where you're just using it as an investment vehicle. So they make rules where, for example, in Denver, you can own a short-term rental, but you have to actually be on premise whenever a guest comes in. And that doesn't really make sense for our model. So we have to go out and find different cities where we know that they don't care if it's non-owner occupied. You just have to register, get a permit, go through the hoops to get that situated. And then the last part is the most important one, because this is not a listed and they will come solution. That's a mistake that a lot of people end up making, is thinking that, oh, there's all this money in Airbnb. I just have to find a property and then it's going to be the end. I'll make all this money. What we found is that we want to add an extra touch, and that extra touch that we put in is going to lead to higher cash flow. For example, in Tahoe, we turned the garage into a game and movie room. So we added a pool table, added a movie projector, added couches in the garage. And then we also added a hot tub in the backyard. And that's really, if you look through our reviews, that's what stands out because we added these different renovations. No different in Miami. We turned the ADU into a lounge and movie room. We built out a pool in the front yard, and we added small touches here and there so that when you come on Airbnb and you see these properties, you know you want this. And the other part about it on the back end of management is, we have all these tools set up, but at least on the front end, between looking at the numbers, looking at the regulations, and then making sure that we can do renovations to stand out, that is what goes into our process in terms of selecting properties.
Got it. And I got to get a little controversial. What are your thoughts on cities that have those regulations where you have to occupy the residence or be there when someone is on premise versus those who are kind of like, you know what, do your thing? What are your personal thoughts on that? And I'm sure you've probably learned a whole lot since running the business.
Yeah, I see both sides.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. Of course, nobody wants to be next door to a party house. So a lot of the regulations, the stricter ones, come from homeowners that don't want a lot of Airbnb guests coming through their city, taking away housing stock. You've seen it all in the news. But at the same time, you talk to a lot of the hosts of Airbnbs. This is a source of revenue. This is a source of income that they're using to pay off mortgages, to pay for their college, their children's college tuition, all these different things where the opportunity presents itself that you just aren't going to find in the hotel space, like you can find a special experience in an Airbnb.
Are you looking for a community of like-minded individuals and access to experts in real estate?
Yeah.
Are you interested in real estate but need more support and guidance?
You know who it is?
The Black Real Estate Dialogue presents the Real Estate Investing Community. No matter how much or how little real estate experience you have, we've created a community for you because your perspective is important. All right, tell me, where's the number one place where you can do Q&A with experienced guest speakers 2 times per month? How about unlimited access to past guest speakers' recordings? What about a private Slack channel to engage in daily discussion with everybody in the community to share resources and support each other? Head on over to blackrealestatedialogue.com. That's blackrealestatedialogue.com. It's the real estate investing community presented by the Black Real Estate Dialogue. Come join us today.
So I see it from both sides, and from where we're standing, we're trying to help more people build their wealth. So, for us, it's more so about really democratizing this access to real estate. So we're going to get behind the cities that actually want to allow the extra income that comes from the taxes they collect from these Airbnbs. And from our perspective, that gives us more cash that we can pass on to our retail investors. And at the end of the day, I hope this eventually happens, but one day I want cities to just have zoning that is short-term rental only, because I feel like that would solve a lot of issues. If you just had zoning that anyone in this particular part of the town, it's just short-term rentals. And then we don't have to go through these myriad processes of, oh, this zone works, but this zone doesn't, or non-owner occupied versus owner occupied. But again, I'm not in planning. I have no government ties. So if you know somebody, please send them my way. I'd love to have that conversation.
Love it. So how would a prospective guest find your properties to be able to stay at? Would they go directly to your website?
Right now through Airbnb.
Okay, cool.
Eventually we want to get big enough a la Sonder where we have a direct-to-consumer presence. But for now, Airbnb is the 800-pound gorilla, and they do all the marketing for us. So we have not had any slowdowns. Literally within 48 hours of launching Miami, we had 5 bookings. That's how quickly the machine works.
Wow.
So, we thank Airbnb for putting all that money into getting these properties booked, because it benefits us.
Yeah, I mean, I like it. You're building your own business and helping other people build wealth over time using a platform that's already established. So can't be mad at that.
Right. And for us, we can see it both ways. If we end up going the direct consumer route, great, because then that's more money that we save versus the fees that you pay to Airbnb. But we know that if something's working, don't try and fix it. So that's why we're definitely happy to be on these platforms. And not just Airbnb, VRBO, Booking.com, a couple others in the space too that can also bring in revenue.
Definitely love it. The other question I have is from the investor side. Someone was to invest. How did you get your first group of investors that enabled you to kind of grow and buy properties and so forth?
Hit the phones. I cannot make this up. I have hundreds of contacts in my phone. They can all attest to this. I went through probably 80% of them, because you have those 20% you haven't talked to since college. I'm not going to reach out to them because they'll think I'm spamming them. But to the ones that I have actually kept up with over the years, I went through every single one. I didn't ask for money. I asked for advice. And that's something that I learned a while back, and I can't remember the source, but it goes along the lines of, if you ask for money, you get advice. If you ask for advice, you get money. So for everyone that I hit up, I asked them for feedback, honest feedback about our app that we had just built and launched. And then that led to conversations about, oh, I'd love to help you guys and support. And then what we saw from there is, once the aha moment came where they got a profit payout the very next month, that's where the light bulb clicks for a lot of our retail investors who may put in, a couple $100, a couple $1,000, but then once they actually see profit and cash out, that's where they start putting larger amounts in. So that's where we've been fortunate enough that we've done a good job up front to benefit our early investors who helped us out.
Got it. And how has your marketing changed in addition to reaching out to your personal contacts? How do you go after new investors now, or is it just kind of just building off of the original folks and word of mouth and such?
A lot of word of mouth. I mean, this platform that you have so graciously allowed me to be on is another way that we've helped spread the word. But we don't want to spend a lot of money on marketing if we don't have to. Eventually we'll get there when we really hone in on our target audience, our customer acquisition costs, and everything along those lines. But for now, while we're in hustle mode and while we're trying to be a scrappy young startup with just 2 people, we have to do things that don't scale. And one of those things is really building out word of mouth. So when you download the app, you want to tell your friends about this. And so I have a special gift. So anybody that spends more than $100 on our app, I can't say it because I will ruin it for new people, but I have different tiers of gifts that I send out to our retail investors as a thank you gift. And that's something that I'm sure most people, when they download an app or they buy something off of Amazon or name your consumer app here, you probably don't get a personalized gift in the mail. But that's one of the things that we found out early on. We want to do this. We want to actually give back. And at some point, it's going to be too much for just me to try and do on my own. But for now, it's been fun to see the reactions from people when they get their specialized gift after investing with us.
Definitely, definitely. And tell us more about the app building process. Is this something that you two hired someone to do? Is it something you did yourselves? And like, how involved were you just in the process of optimizing the app for what you believe the consumers would want to see?
Oh, that's all my co-founder. He is the coding whiz. I have no business ever trying to code out anything in Swift or Java, Python, name your programming language here. But along the way, again, part of what I mentioned earlier about getting feedback, that was my job. So product feedback is always important. Even to this day, we're never satisfied with what we have. So we constantly ask for feedback. But he luckily, and I mean, not even luck, he built that skill, but luckily enough for me, we had those skill sets that could pair off of each other, where he can build the app and then I can help sell it to people.
Got it. I guess furthermore, what does it look like just like day to day in terms of like the responsibilities that you two take on in the business?
Yeah, a lot of the front end, so acquisition, renovation, of course, building the app, that's on Brian, my co-founder. And then a lot of the back end stuff in terms of managing the properties, managing investor expectations, that falls on myself. So we definitely pair off pretty well here in terms of our responsibilities on a day-to-day basis.
Got it. And what would you say have been some of the biggest challenges over the past year or so? I mean, it's been quite a past almost 2 years, right? You mentioned just almost getting a property and then March happened. Fast forward to August,
Right.
you were able to close on the first property and so forth. But what are some challenges that you would say you've experienced just in the early stages of the business?
I mean, managing. This is not a long-term rental. This is not hire a property manager and then collect rent payments at the beginning or end of the month. This is a hospitality business. So there were a lot of lessons learned. The biggest one is how to manage expectations with guests who don't treat your property like they would treat their own.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to learn the hard way that as long as people aren't doing it with malintent, you let it go, because you have SCR insurance, you have Airbnb insurance, you have ways that you can remedy situations, but not taking it out on guests is one thing that I had to learn over time.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the beginning stages where someone would mess up their house or break something or not follow our house rules, or even one person had a dog that left feces all over the house, it was very hard to swallow, because this is our asset, this is our property that we have to keep up for our investors. And so I just learned over time that, at the end of the day, if you don't follow the rules, here is what happens. So we lay that out pretty heavily in our house rules that we send to all of our guests. And from there, I don't take it personally. So guest interaction, staying with the hospitality mind, that's something you can't learn from the sideline. It's no different than basketball. You can watch all the NBA you want, but until you start shooting hoops, you're not going to learn how to develop that skill. So actually learning how to talk to guests, how to communicate, especially if guests have problems, and being on top of that, that's the biggest challenge that even to this day, it's still learning, but it's part of the business. So it's something that I do, and I definitely take pride in doing.
Definitely. Love it. Love it. Those are quite some challenges. So I'm glad you're still pushing on. That's
I know.
crazy.
I have some horror stories, but we're here.
Well,
Houses are still kicking.
well, I mean, we got time. Feel free to share one that you're comfortable sharing.
Oh, I mean, going
'Cause,
back to the lady with the feces, right?
yeah.
She didn't tell us. We actually had our neighbor, which, just a side tip here, get good with the neighbors around your Airbnb. That
Mhm.
will solve a lot of problems proactively instead of reactively. But we heard from our neighbor that they had dogs at the house. We saw from our cleaner that there were feces all over the house. And we got into a spat over Airbnb messaging because, of course, we have a no pet policy just to keep the house in better shape. And it wasn't until after I left a bad review, which one of the things about Airbnb is that you cannot take back the review. You can't change it, you can't edit it. Once it's there, it's written and you cannot take it back. It wasn't until after I wrote her a bad review that I found out this was a service dog, that she failed to tell me until after all of the back and forth that we were going for. And of course, I felt bad. And it was one of those things where, again, it's just communication. So she wanted to just drop the situation. But once she heard that I left her a bad review, she left a scathing review on her own. And if you look at our Tahoe property, that's the only 1-star review we have,
Mhm.
the only one. But those reviews matter a lot because they make the difference between you ranking high in Airbnb versus being at the bottom of the food chain. So that was a wake-up call because, again, if I had just had the mindset of, you know what, I know that this was not done on purpose, she's not trying to tarnish my house, I probably would have handled that a little differently. And I've had situations since, not with dogs, but just with people breaking things or clogging toilets or
Mhm.
whatever have you, where I didn't take it personally. So that was one that I definitely regret how it all ended up, but it's a learning experience. So sometimes you have to fail to get better at what you do. And that was one of those situations.
Definitely. Definitely. And the reason I wanted you to share is because social media, all these things, the internet, it just glamorizes business, it glamorizes real estate. And I believe it's important for people to understand and know, like, you're going to go through stuff, right? Like,
Mhm.
everybody who's been on this show has gone through things. And, I don't want people to get the wrong idea, right? Like,
Right.
there's great success, right? Y'all have done well. You're continuing to grow the portfolio, continuing to allow people to purchase shares in these properties and so forth. But there's some challenges that come too. That doesn't mean
Oh,
that
yeah.
you can just quit and give up. It's just part of the game.
Exactly. Exactly. And, as long as you know what your mission is, I mean, we know that this is not stopping with 2 properties. We're trying to build this up across the world. That helps get through the tough times where you have a lot of things that may come down on you, whether it's property management side or just business side. So we understand we're here for the long term, and we're going to be here through the ups and downs.
Definitely, definitely. So, what does the future look like? You've expanded pretty quickly in the last year or two. You've got a spot in Tahoe. You have one in Miami. What other states or other cities are you looking at if you're able to share? And just what's some of the plans for the future?
Yeah, we have a lot of different cities we're looking at. We'll pick the right one depending on, again, the numbers, the regulations, and the renovations. But between the ones that we know have can produce good returns, anything from Henderson outside of Vegas to, of course, Orlando, which is where we originally were going to start, to Smoky Mountains, Florida Panhandle. There are a lot of places across the country where you can make good money if you know what you're doing, and our job is, it's not really either or, it's just win. Because we know eventually we're going to own in all of these different cities. So it's just figuring out timing. And the other thing too is we have developed a newer program where we're calling it the Alpha Investor Program, to help other people who may have the funds that can buy properties, but don't have the time and want us to go in as 50-50 partners. That's something else that we're rolling out here pretty shortly as well. And then, of course, the last thing that we were looking at is we're on iOS right now. So anyone with the iPhone, you can own a Cloud Castle. We don't have Android just yet. So we're putting the pieces together to get that in place, because again, if our goal is to democratize access to wealth, we got to be on all platforms. So that's something else that we're looking down the pipeline as well.
Got it, got it. And something I wanted to ask earlier, what was it like during the rehab process? Was it the first time for either of you kind of managing a rehab process? And of course, it's not directly in the cities you're living in. So I would love to just learn more about what that process was like.
Yeah, for Tahoe, my co-founder had some experience through his dad, who was a contractor. So he took a lot of it on himself, which actually helped us save on our initial investment, which produces higher cash on cash returns. And a lot of stuff. I mean, YouTube is huge, right? Like you can learn a lot of things that he picked up along the way to help build out some of the pieces of our moving game room when we were renovating the garage. And so either that, something else that we're looking into, I'm sure your audience might be familiar with the BRRRR strategy: buy, rehab, refinance, rent out, and repeat. And that's something else where if we have enough runway in terms of our cash, then we can take time to build things almost from the ground up to our specs that we know are going to sell well on Airbnb. So you can either, on one spectrum, do all the renovation on your own if you have the skills or the time to learn it, or on the other spectrum, just hire out contractors and make sure the numbers work out. So we're definitely interested in both models.
Love it. Love it. And how can people invest with you? We've gone through, we've learned about the company. And one thing that's so prohibitive for people is cost, right? Cost, taking on certain risk. It's just a lot for some people. And, hey, I get it. I'm sure you get it. Some people may want to start their real estate investing differently. And I think something like this is a good opportunity for someone who maybe they don't have the tens of thousands of dollars, but they want to generate some income. They want to learn.
That's right.
I'm sure you provide tons of information to your investors to understand what's going on. Perhaps they want to start this way. So, if I'm a potential investor, just let me know how to go about it, why I should go about it and invest in shares with Cloud Castle.
Yeah, well, this is the best way to dip your toes in the short-term rental water, right? So rather than losing your socks over trying to do this yourself and figuring it out and spending a lot of time and money to do so, this way you can learn from what we're doing in a very passive manner. So you don't have to go through the process of finding an agent and a lender and a contractor and getting all the tools that we have in place for our different short-term rentals. You just jump onto our app, pick your market, pick how much you want to invest, sign a contract to make it legal because we put you on an LLC. And from there, if we have a profit, you get paid out the next month. And then we also, as you mentioned earlier, in terms of education, we have a Real Estate 101 series for people that are just new to the game. We have a weekly newsletter where we share any and all news related to real estate that we find out in the world, and we make sure that we're with you on this journey. So for anyone who has never invested in short-term rentals, this is a great way to dip your toes, and then you can go do it yourself. I have no problem with that. But this way, you at least can learn about the ins and outs. And right now, while we're still two people, you have access to the co-founders. So it's pretty easy to get in touch with us if you ever have any questions related to what we're doing or just learning how to do it yourself.
Definitely. I like the fact that it's twofold. People are able to get education. People are able to also make money and invest. And I'm sure there's like different scales and amounts and all that good stuff, which people you can speak about now, or people can learn more, after they inquire. So I do like that it's two-sided as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as you mentioned, it's pretty tailored to what you need. So you can go on our app, you can reach out to us, either support@cloudcastle.io or reach out to me, Jimmy @cloudcastle.io. I'm happy to help if anyone has questions, but a lot of it you'll find it's pretty straightforward. So we try to make this as automated as possible because no one likes to talk to sales agents when you're trying to buy properties, hint, timeshares. So we're not trying to do that model. We want it to be as easy as possible for you to jump on our app and then find out the property you want to invest in.
Definitely. So if someone wants to invest, like, can they invest? Would they have to invest in some future property, or could they get shares in properties that you already currently have?
No, they can invest right now. Because of SEC rules, we have to have a cap in terms of non-accredited investors. That's something else that we're looking to try and mitigate down the line. Where I don't know if you're familiar with Reg A, but that's something that we're definitely interested in. It's just a high hurdle to get there, where you have to just minimum spend $100,000 on legal fees. But we're going to get there. For
Mhm.
now, we have a cap of 35 non-accredited investors in any one given property.
Got
So
it.
we still have room in these different properties, and you can invest right now in either Miami or Tahoe, and you can decide how much you want to invest depending on what your means are. For no reason am I ever going to tell anyone throw your entire life savings into cloud castles. That's just stupid.
Yeah.
But whatever you feel is comfortable, that's where this could be a great way to build your wealth, and you get a lot better return than storing it in a savings account that maybe is paying you 1% annually.
Got it. That makes sense. That makes sense. Is there like a minimum amount that people? Is there a minimum investment amount?
No minimums. No
Got it.
minimums.
Got it. So essentially, it's like, all right, I want to put $500. It'll show me this is what you'll get, kind of thing. This is the ownership, all so on and so forth. So it's
That's
pretty.
right.
So you're right. It is super straightforward.
Yeah.
You just put the
That's what we're after. That's right.
you just put the numbers in and press buy when it's at something that's good for you.
Yeah, that's right.
Definitely, man. Jimmy, is there anything else that you want to share with the people? I want to make sure we cover as much as we can, and share, and you're able to share as much as you can. You know, I've really enjoyed this interview, so I want to make sure we're not missing anything.
I mean, we've covered a lot on this interview, and again, I appreciate you hosting us, because we're just a small startup right now. We have ambitions to be a big player in the space, and we can't get there unless we have retail investors that want to download our app and want to invest with us. So for anyone that wants to find us, we have the website cloudcastles.io. We have an Instagram, cloudcastle@cloudcastle.io as well. And please give us feedback. We're still only a year in since launching. So even though we have these live properties and we know what we're trying to do, we're open to feedback. And I'm always open to hearing from people to see how we can make our product better and continue to scale up.
Definitely. I mean, that's one of the things that I really love about the show is we're able to have a diversity of people in the industry, diversity of investors. And I think it's just so special to me to have a company here who is at the early stages. I can't wait to see when you have 10, 20, 30 properties all over the country and have you back. Maybe we can even do it in person live at one of the properties. Hint, hint, just throwing that out there.
I'm down, poolside, right?
Yeah. So, this is just the beginning. I'm inspired hearing this. And yeah, I mean, I can't wait to put it out. I know our audience will gain so much value out of it. And, much respect to you and your co-founder for what you two have started. And in the midst of everything going on, have continued to grow. So, amazing story.
Hey, man. Well, I appreciate it. And this isn't the end. This is only the beginning. So we're going to keep growing it. And because of your help, this helps us get out the story to more people. So again, I thank you for hosting me on here.
Absolutely. So one more time, let the people know where they can find you, contact you, and get all the information.
Yeah, cloudcastles.io on the web. If you like being on the gram, at cloudcastles.io. If you want to reach out to us personally, you can either do it at support@cloudcastles.io, or you can send me an email at jimmy@cloudcastles.io. I'm open to receiving any and all feedback you got, and would love to help you invest with us.
Awesome. Thank you so much again, Jimmy. And thank you all for listening to another episode of the Black Real Estate Dialogue podcast. If you haven't already, again, please subscribe, leave us a 5-star rating and review. We are shouting out all 5-star reviews we received, so definitely get yours in. Thank you in advance for supporting us in that way. And if you want to join the Bread Real Estate Investing community, you can get started for your first week for just $1 at blackrealestatedialogue.com, or click the link below in the show notes. Thank you so much, and I look forward to hearing from you all soon. Hi, everyone. Sam here from the Black Real Estate Dialogue. Make sure to hit that notification bell and that subscribe button and to visit us at blackrealestatedialogue.com.